Welcome to Ghostly. Today, I know that we said we were going to be off in January, but guess what? We lied. And we have a predictions episode with our favorite, Jacob Mayfield.
Hi!
Yay.
And you're my favorite too.
Aw.
I'm so excited.
We could not go into the new year without a New Year's prediction episode.
It's one of my favorite things. Whenever I'm getting ready for like the start of the new year, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go see Ghostly. I'm going to do some year ahead reading.
Yeah.
So it's very much like part of my year now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thing.
Well, glad to have you in Ghostly Studios.
I did think it was tacky. I had to go through the gift shop.
Yeah.
It was a hard sell. It was a hard sell.
Yeah.
Well,
especially since most of the stuff was yours.
I was just going to say, Ghostly Studio is pretty much decorated with things we've gotten from you.
Yeah, exactly.
We have an on-air sign. We have your poster, but then over there we have your flag that you made
and
us,
your
and your pinata, your the cootie catcher that we did.
Listen, Ghostly Studio. Last time I was here, it looked nice. I don't want people to think that this was a ragamuffins production, but I wish people could see it now. It is very nice.
Yeah, we're stepping it up.
It's looking good in here, and it is. This is no dining room podcast.
No,
this is pretty good.
I mean, it was, but
well, I'm excited for this year for two reasons. Okay. So number one is that we're going to take a little bit of a different twist towards the predictions. We're going to be talking about using tarot to manifest. Ooh. We're going a little active with our predictions this year. So that's going to be cool, and we're going to get to that. But the other thing that I'm super excited about is that Jacob wrote a book.
Yeah, a whole book.
A whole book on tarot.
Yeah.
And so we definitely want to talk about it.
I would love to tell you about it. I always get so nervous. So Rebecca has a very strong English background. I was like, oh God, please don't read the book. You will find all the semicolons that weren't supposed to be there.
Here's the thing. As I told Pat when I first met him, I will always notice the mistakes, but I won't say anything.
That's a class act.
No, she sends back my text with red lines on it and stuff.
I just note it. And then we move on. And
you should see all the Ghostly scripts. It's all canceled out.
It looks like blood.
It's
just all red marks.
And then I ignore everything. So
I've been there.
Well, I mean, it's and here's the thing: a real editor would not find me all that useful. So I just know some punctuation.
Well, also, I mean, you do readings for Memoriam development. You read,
that's true.
You didn't read all 400, but you read a portion of the 400 plays that were submitted for Nightshade.
Yes.
There were 400 plays submitted?
Over 400.
Over 400.
This is already a tangential episode. I'm sorry if this is your first time listening. So, first of all, if you're new, what is Memoriam Development? What is that?
It's a theater company that we belong to, that me and Rebecca belong to, and we perform with. I'll do improv with them. We've done sketch shows. They also do a lot of podcasts. Now, Ghostly is not a Memoriam podcast, but only because it just doesn't fit in the definition of what Memoriam is.
But what we're talking about is a show that Memoriam's been doing now, and I've been in, and Pat has helped with stage stuff. You were in. That's true. In-ish. Called Nightshade.
Oh.
It's 10 horror one acts. It's fantastic. It's great. And I was in, I think was it the first one or the second one? I don't remember, but it was great. And we've been doing it for a long time, and it's going to be in February this year, because we all realize that we're all busy during the spooky season.
Yes. And love is a nightmare.
And so love is a nightmare.
That's the theme. But
this year.
Also, I want to say that those 400 came from all over around the world.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. People submitted them in and they just read them. I had no part of it because you don't want a Southsider reading your scripts and stuff beforehand.
It's like it feels a little formal.
Yeah, exactly.
So
where's the sausage? Huh?
Where's the Sausage King? Yeah. Deep cut for long-time listeners.
Yes, there you go. So anyway, if you're in the Elgin area, it's going to be at Side Street Studio Arts in Elgin, Illinois, the first 2 weekends in February.
Nice.
Coming up.
Yeah. So I'm not in it. I just helped select the plays.
She's producing it.
Yeah.
One of the producers.
Okay.
There you go. That's what we'll call it. Well, okay. So sidetrack. Sorry, but if you're in the Chicago area, we hope that you Side Street Studio. Right?
Oh, sidetrack. Sorry.
Sidetracked at Side Street.
We're getting sidetracked with Side Street.
Yeah. A lot of sides. Okay.
It's
like a D&D game.
But before we get into our manifestation, I did want to ask a few questions about the book because it's super interesting. I haven't read a book like this about tarot before.
Oh, are you serious?
Yeah. Like I always I buy the deck and then you get the thing. Yeah. I think I bought one book once, but again, it didn't really pull me in to read it.
Yeah.
Right. Where this did.
It's funny you say that. So when I was writing the book originally, I was talking to my husband and I said, have you ever read a tarot book? He said, I've read 2 and I hated both of them. Yeah. And that was kind of the fuel behind the project was what's something I can create that
people won't hate.
That people won't hate. And to be clear too, there are so many tarot books that I love and I go back to. I mean, I have probably over 100 tarot books, a really substantial amount. But I think when you're first starting, finding something that is that just right fit can be kind of tricky. So
yeah.
So what level would you say people should be at if they're going to read this book?
Anyone with $20 USD. No, I'm kidding. I would say it's definitely designed for a beginner.
Yeah.
But I'll admit, I do read a lot of beginner books.
Yeah.
And because oftentimes the people I'm reading for, and I do usually around 12 to 1,300 readings a year, like a really substantial quantity.
Wow. I don't feel as special anymore.
You are special. Don't everyone. Pat's very special.
How many podcasts do you do predictions for?
Only 2 or 3.
Oh, okay. Oh, then I feel much better. Then.
But you are by far the most accurate of those 2 to 3. But what I was really looking for was something that would be beginner friendly, but even for an experienced reader, I'm working with so many people who have no experience with tarot.
Sure.
Sometimes a beginner concept of this is this. It's like, wow, I love how succinct that was.
Yep.
I like the metaphor that author used. I like the kind of anecdote they provided.
Sure.
Because I really feel like a big part of my job is meeting people where they're at and communicating really effectively. So to do that, I'm always looking for ideas.
Yeah.
It makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, I definitely felt like the book was written at I don't mean to say it was dumbed down because it's not that, but it was an easy read and approachable, and it doesn't take it for granted. It's not super long. You can skip around if you're like, oh no, I know this part, you could just skip it and go to something else. So, all right. I was going to ask you to tell us about your book. So maybe give us a little,
kind of brief overview.
Yeah, a little bit.
So I was really looking, like you said, to make a comprehensive guide. And even when I was thinking about the writing style, I did want it to be accessible. I love really esoteric, heady tarot books, but that can be so intimidating if you have a whole bunch of cards spread out on your dining room table. You got a book open in one hand.
You just want to do a quick reading.
You just want to kind of get going.
Get your hands dirty.
Yeah, you want to get a taste of it. And I do think that you don't have to be an experienced reader to have a great experience and have an accurate experience.
Sure.
So I think it's something that's accessible to anyone. Some of the things I wanted to really cover, though, is I did want to give even just a brief tarot history. Tarot history has really been, the accuracy of it has ebbed and flowed a lot.
Definitely.
I remember
we talked about it in the tarot card. Didn't we do a tarrow episode?
Yes,
I think once.
Where I'll never forget watching. It was like a Miss Cleo infomercial where she talked about the history of tarot, and it was not great. I mean, it was great in a very 90s nostalgia way. But I wanted something that gave you just the basics that you could probably read in 5-10 minutes. And I also wanted to really bring a lot of emphasis into intuitive skills.
Sure.
So I spent 2 chapters talking about one about the relationship between tarot and intuition, but another one just on developing your intuition.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. And I based it off work I've done with clients and also a workbook I had briefly where I wanted it to all be things that are accessible.
Yeah.
If you've ever gone to a psychic development workshop or or even read a book on intuition development, sometimes the exercises are, if you're not used to it, they're a little out there.
Little hokey.
They're a little hokey, a little weird. And I was like, what are just things that are very approachable, very kind of hands-on that people have success with? So that was also really important. I also wanted to just include a lot of things like tips, advice. I think the first chapter is just frequently asked questions. What are the questions people ask me all the time?
I love that you put that in the beginning of the book because, that's how you should start. It's like, this is what people have asked me so that you can get something from it. And then let me take you through it.
Exactly.
I like the definitions. I think that's super helpful. Yeah. It's good.
It was just a really fun odyssey, if you will.
I was gonna say, you got my heart when the first part of it is like, I really like the Odyssey, and this is based on because it's like, oh, Tarot Odyssey, got it.
And that's always something that the Odyssey and also the Iliad always really
sorry, Homer's The Odyssey is what I'm talking about.
And not Homer Simpson. Oh, you beat me to the joke. But so much of tarot is about your life journey. And
yes, it is.
It is an odyssey.
Yeah.
So if anything, I was just shocked no one had ever used it as a tarot book title before. I was like, wow.
Well, now they have.
And
they will never do it again. So.
Take that.
There you
people
go.
Of the world.
Well, and I wanted just to follow up a little bit with the intuition piece that you just mentioned, because I thought it was interesting because you talk about the importance of intuition, and then you're like, by the way, if you don't have intuition, here's some ways to develop it. Do you really think everybody can develop their intuition, or 100%. Do some people have it more than others?
It's just like musical ability. So if you are a professional musician or a music teacher and you're listening, you know that anyone can be musical.
Wait, what about like tone deaf people though?
That is super rare.
Okay.
So like my degree is in music. To find someone who's truly tone deaf, that is like a fraction of a percentage.
Sure.
Most people act in a way that's tone deaf because they're very self-conscious, or they don't feel comfortable, or they don't have the skills. So even something like playing the piano, anyone can learn to play the piano. Now, is everyone going to be like a classical pianist, like, virtuoso? No. But can anyone like learn that instrument and have like a pleasant and fulfilling experience? 100%. And that's what intuition's like. Are there some people, similar to like playing an instrument, are there some people you can just sit down at it and they'll just make it happen?
Right.
Yeah, of course. But is it something where if you really want to do it and just work on it in little steps, you can 100%. And really our intuition is just our gut instinct. It's that, I mean, some people will call it a sixth sense, but it's really just kind of listening to that inner voice. And something that I think is also really important, I was talking to a client about this yesterday, is recognizing that inner voice, and if it is your intuition and not necessarily abundant optimism or anxiety.
Yeah, that's what it is for me.
Yeah, well, and that's very easy, especially when you're reading for yourself. A question I get all the time is, do you get readings? Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Because I'll flip a card and I'll be like, let me flip like a couple more just to check. Let me just pick 12 clarifying cards. Sure. And bringing that outside perspective, it's so helpful. And I do have a chapter in the book just about like how to find a reputable reader too.
That is helpful. Yeah. Because, I mean, you know where I stand on that.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah. I mean, I want it to be for entertainment value. I want people to get that out of it. And, if you get something out of it for your life, that's great, but I always am concerned with people just trying to take people's money for
completely. And I think that with the internet, it's a little harder. I think in general, like we were talking about paranormal conferences and events.
Yeah.
When you can see someone, meet them, see their prices fully listed.
Right.
Sure.
I would say you're more likely to run into someone who's maybe not the best quality reader than someone who's like an elaborate con artist.
Gotcha.
But it is nice to have those steps because a lot of people and a lot of my clients are virtual, and definitely my relationship with that has changed over time, kind of from being in the lockdown and kind of that time just at home. But I love that I can work with people in California.
Yeah.
Or I actually did a reading with a woman in England like 2 weeks ago. She had just moved. And it was so nice. And she's like, we were talking about just like kind of what's the value of a reading. She's like, it's just nice to see your face.
Yeah.
Because we had met in the Chicagoland area.
Okay.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she was just
so it reminds her of home.
Yeah. And it was, and that's really pleasant.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
I like that.
Absolutely.
But I think intuition, if you take simple exercises, work on it in small steps, you can definitely achieve it. It's just like practicing an instrument or even like exercising. You can do a really heavy workout once a week. And to be clear, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physician. I'm not an exercise
but
expert.
You play one on TV.
And I don't, well, I used to. But, ideally you do a little bit of that every day.
Yeah.
I actually had a music teacher who'd always say, Jacob, you don't brush your teeth for the week. once. You do it twice a day, every day. So
Damn it, that makes too much sense.
Right. And I'm like, no.
I got to practice twice a day.
And actually, I mean, twice a day practice is so good too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think it's something anyone can develop.
Yeah.
Great question.
All right. Well, and then just a couple more. So you talk, you spend an entire chapter, I was not ready for this, about creating your space.
Yes.
And I thought that was super interesting because in my mind, like, okay, what are we spending a whole chapter on with this? But you do it by using the 5 senses. And I had not thought of it that way before. So why is this important to cover all the senses?
It was not my idea. I want to start by claiming that it was so when I was doing copies of the book, when my husband read it, he's like, what if you organized it by the senses? And I'm like, that is brilliant.
Wow.
Blowing my mind.
It totally blew my mind because, each of our senses really connects us to our environment in unique ways. And it really kind of influences how we perceive and interpret things, whether that's a mystical setting or even like when you go to a restaurant, how often are you paying for the sizzle or the steak? Right?
Yeah, it depends on the restaurant.
Depends on the restaurant.
Yeah. Because there's some dives that I've gone to that have the best food, but still, I mean, I get what you're saying because I mean, I used to do that when I was pagan. I used to have my altar room and I used to have it all set up, ready to go.
I mean, I think from a very kind of skeptical scientific side, when we create a space where we're engaging in our senses, it just kind of pops our mind into that place.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely agree with that. It's what it is. It's symbolic for you then
100%.
And then that triggers something then.
Yeah, and I think on a very mystical side it really can help us tap into things. So even sight, if I'm reading, I need to be able to see the cards.
True.
That sounds really obvious.
It's basic, but
it sounds obvious, but Pat likes it dark.
I do.
Oh, yeah.
He
I love it
will
dark.
turn on like a one red light in the corner.
Oh my God, that's great.
Ooh.
That's my perfect night.
But even things like, so with sight, making sure the environment around me feels good, looks good, that I can see the cards. With sound, I know a lot of readers who will work with music on. I really like it to be quiet. Something when I do events is one of the things in my very svelte performance contract is just don't have me next to a speaker. Because I'm not going to be able to give you.
Wait, you could put that in your contracts? Yeah. Jeez, I should have put that in. No,
right? But because I'd done events where I was really next to a DJ speaker,
and then they can't hear you,
I'm
and you
screaming at people for 3 hours.
Yeah,
that's not a great experience, and I don't feel like I'm doing my best.
Again, even if we're taking this just for entertainment value, that's not very entertaining then.
100%.
You're being disrupted. So
and especially kind of even like spiritual elements, something I think a lot about is smell. For me, smell is really important. When I'm at home, I burn a lot of incense.
What's your favorite?
Oh, probably Nag Champa.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And even like when I'm going out to events, I'll have Florida water with me, which has a very specific scent. I'll use spiritual oils, and that will help me kind of click into that. Not only kind of tell me like, all right, it's time to leave kind of the mundane elements of my life behind, the fact that I need to get gas on the way home and I need to return that email. And it helps me click into this idea of it's time for me to really tap into something more spiritual. And whether that is just reading cards casually at a company event, we're trying to keep things upbeat and do fast readings, or doing an hour-long session with someone, I really want to be really present for them. I want to be really mindful, and I want to make sure they're getting the best experience possible.
That would be hard for me.
So
to maintain, that awareness for an hour, that'd be hard for me.
With my work in education, it's a big thing that we talk about for studying. Like studying for your ACT or a test, or just doing your homework, is have a space that is designated. And so that is where you go every time you do that work, so that your brain, when you sit there, your brain is like, oh, this is work time.
Right.
So like, even if I always tell them, if you're sitting at your kitchen table, sit at a different chair.
Yeah.
Than you eat at. Because again, you like all those things, like you're the smell and like all of that.
Yeah, that's why I always got hungry when I was studying. Because
all I can think about
snack attack.
Yeah, exactly.
All I can think about though, with all of these senses, is was it not last year that we drank
The Greek coffee. It wasn't last year. It was
in the middle. It was for Skeptics Day.
It was May. We did
the late Skeptics Day. Yeah. So, and I was like, oh yeah, that's a way to taste.
Such a specific. Well, and I mean, and especially any kind of tasseography, that's a huge part of the experience. Is like, especially with like let's think about, if you haven't listened to the Greek coffee episode, if you're just like doing tea leaf reading, you still like, you're touching the cup. Yeah, the cup is warm. You're drinking it. You're smelling it. It's a very engaging experience.
It is
not always the most practical to offer, because I don't want to be in the food and beverage industry. But even with tarot, it can feel kind of mundane, because it's like, oh, it's a pack of cards. It's like the Uno deck and the the old cabin. But even just like touching the cards, it really does kind of tap into that very special, very intuitive side of yourself.
And certain cards too would make you feel more of that. But I forgot, I want to congratulate you for winning that competition against Spiros.
Thank you. The very bad trophy is on my mantle.
Nice. Good. All right, I have one more for you. Okay, and so you were talking actually just how you have over 100 books. So I know you have a lengthy big background in tarot, right? You give over 1,000 readings a year. You have all these books, but I'm curious, what did you learn in writing this book?
A lot, which I don't want to say I wasn't expecting, but I learned a lot of things I wasn't expecting to learn.
Okay.
So obviously, like, writing a book on any topic, it's going to deepen your understanding just through the research and the writing process, like crafting through it. The hardest part of writing the book for me was the card interpretations.
Oh.
And because I felt like all the other chapters were like an essay.
Sure.
Where with each card, when I do like a one-on-one tarot coaching, which I'd offer coachings and lessons, I will spend an hour with a coaching student on maybe one or two cards. Well, and I was like, how do I get this into like a very short page?
Sure. I used to meditate on like a card each day.
Oh yeah.
That's when I first, learned tarot. I would focus on one card each day and what it meant to me.
Yeah.
And then I'd look up what it meant. And it's like, is it similar?
I was going to say, how accurate was it?
Sometimes very accurate, sometimes super not accurate. Sometimes I was like way off.
That's a lot of people who do that, because that's something I've talked to clients about. Often they're very accurate with. Yeah. The other thing too is when you're learning tarot, it can feel very overwhelming because there's 78 cards.
Yeah.
But I always tell people, if you do a card a day, you'll do it. That's what, a third. That's not even a third of the year. Like that's very approachable. You just have to take it. How do you eat an elephant? A bite at a time.
There you go.
Right.
There you go.
So there was definitely just a lot of learning that happened. Also, it really made me reflect on my perspectives on tarot, because when I'm working with someone one-on-one, I'm able to really make sure that I'm meeting them right where they're at. Sure. And I wanted to create a resource where I felt like people could come in at like different perspectives and still gain something of value from.
I like that.
Well, no, that makes sense, because I was thinking about that, like regularly, like when you're reading a card for somebody, you're connecting what it means to that person. But for the book, you have to write something that's not, there's no person. You're not connecting it to that, you know what I mean? Like who you're reading.
100%.
As I learned.
Yeah.
Unless you're psychic and know who's reading the book.
But then I had to write all these different books. It was too stressful. You brought up something that it clicked something so interesting in my mind, which is when I was going through, I did a lot to make it, to really kind of satiate that. So one thing I talk about is in tarot, there are different figures who are gendered. But when I went through and did all the essays, I always made sure to use gender neutral, because I'll see people come up, I'll see people who identify as male, female, non-binary as like the emperor, which is a very like traditional masculine archetype. But I remember going through and specifically making it neutral, just because I want people to be able to connect and not have any barriers in that really deep connection.
I never even thought about how, it's just,
Well, I mean, we've all watched the Twin Flames documentary by now, I'm sure.
Yes.
So there's a masculine energy and there's a
There's a dominant masculine and a dominant feminine.
And there's a domino pizza.
Oh, no.
And something that I didn't get too much into the book, but I do think a lot about is mysticism from later 1800s to now. There's a lot of exploration of binaries. I actually think the Twin Flame documentary holds up a really important mirror to people in the spiritual world of what is the strengths? And here I'm talking binaries, talk about someone who's embedded in this. But what are the strengths and weaknesses of really looking at things in a binary approach?
Sure.
Is that part of tarot? Yeah, but you want to be really thoughtful about how you engage in that.
Sure.
And even like when I'm just giving general like advice in the book, or if I'm doing like a tarot, like I do a Tarot Tuesday on Instagram, I always pause and I think to myself, what is the worst way that someone could read this?
Oh, sure.
And really pausing and thinking, is there anything I'm saying that would cause someone to do or act in a way that wouldn't be responsible or positive or uplifting? And really going through the book and making sure like everything is neutral so that people can interpret and engage in it, and they're not being directed in odd ways.
Absolutely. I really like that. But when I would do tarot, I would always put a card down to represent like the person that I was reading for. Yeah. So, and then it would be like a Celtic cross kind of thing with that. But I never thought about that. I would always go, okay, you're a man and you have this color hair and you have this color eyes, then this is the card that represents you.
Yes.
But I shouldn't have done that. I should have been like, what card do you feel represents
or what's your energy?
Yeah. It's interesting too. You see a lot more gendering in like Lenormand when you're doing that system. But even with cards that, like right now, the deck that I have in front of me, and we have some tarot decks out, y'all.
There's Definitely. Like a table full of tarot decks. We are going to get to the tarot readings.
We brought like 15 decks here.
Stop myself from making a little bit of a saucy joke. But like the deck I have in front of me is called Tarot of the Divine. And all the images are inspired by deities, folklore, and fairy tales from around the world. So like right now I'm looking at the Queen of Cups, which on a very traditional Rider-Waite deck, illustrated by Pamela Coleman Smith, it would have like a very kind of Euro-centric looking woman on it.
Sure.
And this has something completely different.
Yeah.
So something that I really love that a lot of tarot artists are doing is really expanding decks in ways that are unique, more inclusive. And I read a lot with like historical decks. I really like it. But there's also something really special about seeing yourself represented. Sure. And really, I think the last thing I really learned about the book is my appreciation for any tarot author, no matter how much I read their book and was like, it was okay, was so greatly increased.
Yeah.
So, and I really made me feel connected to them in a very special way.
Nice.
So it was really lovely.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's a great book. And here is the special treat. And we'll bring this up again, but
there's treats?
Yes.
Snack attack.
There's a couple treats. We're going to be bringing them out different times. But the first one is, if you are a Patreon member, especially a VIP Patreon member, Jacob is going to join us for our February live recording. And he's going to get even deeper into this book. And he said he would read one card.
Yeah.
For everyone that comes. So if you are not a Patreon member, this is the time to join us.
Yeah. I'm thinking about joining.
If you do, if you join as a VIP, you can come to the live and get your reading from Jacob and meet him. It's all, on the Zooms, you know, so all happy. Or if you just join in, you can listen to the episode once it comes out. And we also have a whole back catalog. There it is. For Ghostly X.
Yeah.
Lots of fun stuff. So,
absolutely.
So definitely consider joining.
I mean, I'm a member.
You are, yes.
I also think, especially with Patreon membership, because I know many people have Patreons for different artists and makers, I always say, like, give that next tier a shot.
Yeah.
Like, if you're already at, like, a lower tier, try it for a month or two. The worst you're going to lose is a little time and maybe $3-5. And what does that money go to? It's not going to a big evil corporation. It's going to a small and still very evil corporation of Pat and Rebecca. But I do think about that. I'm like, you know what? If I spend an extra $10 on this for a month, what did it do? It went to like help artists I like do their art. And if I didn't like it, I'll cancel.
Well, and I will say this, and I'm not trying to make this a promotion about our Patreon or anything like that.
Because it's about the Dark Matters, not Dark Matters, the Nightshade Festival.
It's about Nightshade. Yeah.
Also go see Dark Matters.
But it's not about that for me, but it's every dollar that we get, we put back into Ghostly.
Yeah, we don't make money.
We don't like live some lavish lifestyle or something like that because of Ghostly money. So
no, like right now, poor Jacob is on a microphone that is, it's okay, but we could do better.
But I mean, some of the Patreon money did go to pay for a slice of pizza for Jacob when he came.
That is true.
It did. And it was delicious. And your butler was very nice when he met me at the door.
I mean, that's Ghostly the butler. Yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Good old chives.
All right. Well, it is time to get into the predictions piece of this. Now, as I mentioned earlier, the idea for this episode, and Jacob was game as always, which is to talk about this and how we can use tarot as a manifestation tool.
So this was Pat's idea, correct?
No, this was mine.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry, Pat.
It's a combination. It's a combo. It's a combo.
We'll say 80-20.
Yeah. I came up with some aspects of it that you're going to hear about, but
yes, no, I don't have anything to add to this discussion. I just had the idea.
Like, let's go.
You guys are bringing the content, not me.
So we should probably start by talking about like what is manifestation, because it's a word you hear a lot now.
Yes.
And really what manifestation is, you could argue it goes back to antiquity. You really kind of see it as it is now, starting early 1900s. But manifestation, it's this idea of personal growth and spirituality, and it's how we bring tangible things into our life through belief and attraction. And the way I often explain to people is, if you want to find happiness in your life, you got two options. You can manifest something, or you can be happy with what you got. So what manifesting is, and another way I'll explain this, especially to skeptical people, is it's like spiritual goal setting. Like we're going to set goals.
I like that.
We're going to bring in that spiritual component, but with that, we're also bringing in a component of like the practical. You're not going to manifest a new car if you sit at home and don't go to work.
Right.
That's a little bit beyond.
Yeah. There was someone that I used to listen to, and I don't want to bring up his name because people will know the name and people will think lesser of me for listening to him. But he always said is if you have a dream, that you should do something each day to achieve that dream, however small it is, even if it's just, looking in the mirror or, giving yourself props for doing something or whatever it is, just something every single day to bring that dream into reality, that it'll happen, but you need to help it.
Exactly. And I think it's this idea of like, what does it look like to focus on our desires and maintaining that mindset, that daily mindset, and using that to really manifest your goals. I don't know if you ever saw my virtual show, but in it, I had something about self-fulfilling prophecies. The idea that if you wake up one day, and this is completely like scientific, and you say, I predict that I am going to do this, a lot of people will do it. And there's a lot of science that says, well, is that mystical, or is it just you're in the mindset?
Yeah.
You're putting yourself in the position. You're behaving differently. You're adjusting your actions.
I totally agree. In fact, I used to do that the opposite way. It was like, if you wake up and you say, this is an awful day, then that's the expectation of the day. And that's what, you're already setting it up for that.
Well, and I think the thing is, who's ever woken up, said it's going to be an awful day?
Me.
You're like, present, Patrick. But if you wake up and you say it's going to be a good day and you have an okay breakfast, you're probably going to be off on the right track.
Yeah, right.
And when we use tarot for manifestation, it's really about using the cards to offer insight into those desires and how we want to achieve them. So it acts as an ability for us to look inward, but also to kind of like gain ideas through archetype.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing I really like about tarot for manifestation is that it provides a physical representation. When I'm trying, a lot of times when I'll talk to people about manifestation, what they want, they're unclear about, and they're not doing any action towards it. So nothing's going to happen. And kind of an analogy I'll use is, it's like when you go to a restaurant and you're like, I want a deep dish pizza, keeping this Chicago-based listeners, and you're like, I'm going to go to Lou Malnati's. I'm going to get a deep dish.
Not a sponsor, but they could be.
Yes, we invite all the Lou Malnati's dollary dues.
Yes.
So let's say you go there and they're out of pizza. Well, you're still at Lou Malnati's, and you can still order something
They have
else.
good salads, though.
So you could do a salad. Maybe they're out of a deep dish. But the point is, like, you've set yourself up for that success. If you're hungry and you don't know what you want, and you end up at McDonald's, but really you wanted a steak, you're not going to be as happy. No. And you might go to the steakhouse and say, well, I didn't get prime rib, But, you know,
I didn't get a Happy Meal.
But I didn't get a Happy Meal. You know, I'm still setting myself up for where I need to be. So what we're going to do is we both have 3 different tarot decks.
We do, yes.
We're each going to pick our tarot decks up and we're going to start shuffling.
Okay.
Ooh.
And with tarot manifestation, there's a couple different ways you can do it. We can use the card as an ability to kind of spark intent. Being like, I want to manifest something, but like, what do I even want? And it's like, okay, well, let's use a tarot card to kind of figure that out.
Okay.
We can also think of something we're trying to manifest in our life and use the card to help provide us with guidance. So, Pat, Rebecca, is there anything that, and I'm going to do some ASMR shuffling, just like.
Oh, thank you for doing that because I can't do that.
That was wonderful. But is there something that you guys are trying to manifest? You're looking for inspiration? What kind of speaks to your spirit right now?
I mean, a kidney would be nice.
A kidney manifestation. Now, I always tell people I don't do medical as part of what I do. But for manifestation, we're not necessarily predicting. We're not necessarily making promises. But if you're up for it, I'd like to try it.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so Pat is doing an intense, serious medical question. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm thinking about ice cream right now. You know what? This summer, I'm actually I will be in Italy for the month of June. I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys.
Really?
Right. Just no. I told the butler. So I'm gonna pull a card on how to manifest in the planning. So in manifestation, like I said earlier, it's good to be specific. So not just, well, we'll make the trip fun, but I'm kind of in the planning phase. I'm doing a lot of Duolingo right now, which is actually a lot of fun.
Oh, cool.
So I'm going to pull a card to kind of, what can I do to manifest the best?
Oh, one just jumped out at you.
And I'm going to take this card too.
Yeah.
Because I actually referenced this card earlier. It's not that would have popped out.
Okay.
About how can I manifest the best planning possible.
Yeah.
So you're looking for some manifestation on kidney. I'm looking for one on planning. Rebecca, what kind of speaks to your spirit?
So I'm trying to decide, should I do something that's ghostly, or are we going to do something separate for ghostly, or should I do something personal?
Ooh, why don't we do personal? And then what we're going to do is we're actually going to pick a card for our ghostly listeners too.
All right.
But, you mean like for...
Like the podcast.
Oh, yeah.
So... Yeah. So I want to manifest more help for ghostly.
More help.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
Hold on. Let's take a break before we get to this.
We're taking, all
let's
right.
take a quick break.
Okay.
Okay, we're back.
Okay, so you're talking about help.
Help.
So what does that mean?
Like I feel like, sorry, listeners, but I just to pull behind the curtain a little bit. But it's just Pat and I, and we do a lot. And I feel like we've been trying to figure out, like, what's the best thing for us as far as like, someone that could help with like marketing or PR or whatever. And I just don't know the best route to like. So I want to find a person or an app or a something that can help us grow ghostly.
Okay. I love that.
Affordably.
Yes.
But I like that you got really specific in the idea of external help. Because sometimes we need help from within ourselves.
Right.
And you talked about people, but even willing to be virtual with that. I mean, there's lots of great digital tools. So let's all pull our cards.
All right.
And Pat,
geez.
do you want to go first?
Sure. I wanted I want a kidney, you know.
Well, first too, you have the traditional.
I have the Rider-Waite deck.
Right.
With what is it?
It's the 1909 back production.
Okay, yeah, which is beautiful.
Yeah, it's very nice.
And I pulled the Ace of Swords.
Okay, so Pat, I know that you've read tarot before.
Yeah.
Any immediate reactions to that card before I dig into it?
Well, first of all, the placement of the card, to me is like pointing at me with the big old sword.
Yes.
Where my kidney would probably go, I'm imagining. So I'm thinking this is a very positive sign for me.
No. What's tricky with tarot when we're manifesting is it's not always predictive. So if you're doing predictive tarot, I'd be like, I see we're cutting into you or something. Sure. But swords there's two elements that come with swords, both intellect and communication. And when we see aces, it's the beginning of the essence of.
Yeah.
So I guess my question for you is, when you're trying to manifest this next step for yourself, what kind of communication channels do you want to continue going through? Are there new ones you've been thinking about? How can you manifest strong communication?
Oh, that's a really good question. So my first thought with that would be like, do I take out an ad maybe and say, hey, guys, I'm looking for a kidney, or do I, continue just telling my friends and stuff like that, and hopefully somebody decides that they want to do something like that? Or do I just, wait and see what happens?
I mean, I feel like with swords, there's definitely the sense of how do I communicate, but also like how do I use my mind at its best?
Sure.
I think even right now, us just talking about it on a podcast, I'm sure there's people who've heard you talk about this before, but probably a handful of people who've never heard it.
Yeah.
So just the fact that we're talking about it right now, in essence, you are manifesting it.
Yeah.
There's no way that someone can give you something if they don't know you exist or that you want it.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So I think it just speaks to thinking about, how do I want to keep communicating? How do I want to stay sharp towards this?
Yeah.
And how do I want to really be smart about how I'm using my time?
Sure.
Because I'd also imagine it's easy to get into a place where, it's like the doom scrolling at 2 a.m. and it's like, well, how do I want to be effective?
Yeah.
So I like that.
And time is at a premium for me. I mean, obviously I work a normal job, that's 40 hours a week. And, then I go to dialysis 12 hours a week. And then, it's like, there's a lot going on with that. So time is a premium. So I would, want to be able to think intelligently about this.
Yeah.
And
I love that. I love that you talk about like your time. It's at this premium right now.
Yeah.
Not only like your daily time, but also the fact that once this happens for you, it's going to be transformative. It's going to give you more time.
Yeah.
So that's part of how we could use it to manifest.
Yeah.
With the one I pulled, which was just kind of how can I best plan? I got the Queen of Cups. Now, the Queen of Cups within this deck, it actually shows it's a figure from Nigeria called Yemoja. And I want to just read a little bit out of the book on this because it's not a deity that I'm super familiar with. So I want to go to a source to really honor that, which is the Queen of Cups represents the surface of the subconscious, which I would agree with. It's a very emotional card. The goddess Yemoja connects those on land to the depth of the spiritual plane. She is mysterious, but also a kind and caring mother. So when I see this card, especially when I see matriarchal figures in tarot, a question is always like nurturing. How do I nurture? How do I bring something into reality? There's also this interesting connection between the spiritual and land. And I think for me, there's this thought of both, what are some of the practical things that need to happen? Train tickets, but also with the really kind of special, magical, kind of more harder to define things. Also the card, because it has so much aquatic imagery, that's something I also want to really kind of tap into. I was recently doing some planning for when we're going to be on the Amalfi Coast. And I think this is kind of saying, make sure that you kind of like where that is. Or like we're going to Venice and thinking about, how do I want to plan Venice? How do I want to make that happen?
Because, I mean, you're going to go there and that might be the only time in your life that you're going to get to go there. And generations that come will probably not be able to.
Well, especially with Venice. I mean, we are not a Venetian podcast. Yet, growth mindset.
Venetia.
Venetia. Vincenza. But there's this feeling of like, if I'm going to be there for this time, how do I want to make the most of it?
Yeah.
So I think for me, this is saying refocus on areas that are water-based and also really think about that balance of not just planning the really practical stuff or the really emotional kind of fun stuff, but really bringing it together.
Yeah. Can I just say one thing about your card? When I think of water, I think of spiritual. I think of like a spiritual change or something like that. So having that much water in it, I think you're going to have some kind of spiritual enlightenment when you're there.
You know, I actually am going to... So the first tarot decks are from Italy, and the oldest one we have the deck is in kind of two places. One is in New York, and the other is in this town outside of Milan. And when we're in Milan, we're going to go visit that museum, and I'm going to get to see like the oldest tarot deck we know of.
That's amazing.
Which I think hopefully will be really amazing.
I think
so. Yeah.
But I love the connection made with the spiritual, because I also think when you're planning something, even something as like fun as a trip, it's easy to make it feel kind of businessy and boring and like, let's just get all the details. And it kind of says, no, stay in focus. This is supposed to be a spiritual, a fun, a loving, a caring experience.
Absolutely.
So definitely something to tap into.
Nice.
What about you, Rebecca? What card did you get?
All right. So I love this card. I don't know what it is, but I just do. It's called The Furnace.
So the Furnace.
The deck.
Should I describe the card?
Yes, can you describe it?
Okay. So to me, it seems Hawaiian. Like, I don't know what it's from, but like basically it's like, those masks.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So, but it's like a vase. And there's a guy, you can see into the vase. It's almost like a big mouth, right? And then there's a nose and eyes, but there's a guy in the mouth stoking the flames.
That's me. That's me with the mouth.
The flames are coming out of the top of the vase, I guess we'll say. And then they're kind of dripping down on the sides.
It's a really intense card. So the deck we're using for this is the Mike Wilcox Tarot and Oracle deck. The Furnace is not a traditional tarot card.
No.
And I think something that's been really special with kind of a lot of modern tarot writing and artistry is the expansion and adjustment of the deck. So I can't remember if the version I have, it was a limited run. When he defines the furnace, when he talks about energetic meanings, he brings up transmutation, expression, fuel, patience, and right action. And then he provides a full essay about the card. But thinking about that goal of that manifestation, we need help. We want help. When you hear transmutation, what does that mean for you in relation to what you're trying to manifest?
That's a great question.
Not to put you on the spot. I'm so sorry.
No. I mean, like, when I think of transmutation, I guess I think of that as like taking something that was one thing and making it another.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody that isn't traditional, like something that maybe this isn't traditionally what most people use.
I love that.
But turning it into that, or, I don't know.
What I like about that is it opens you up to new opportunities. So I think a lot of times when people want help in production, like something like a podcast, they might think, well, let's hire an intern. Let's get someone who specializes in this. And all those things are very valid and valuable. But because you even talked about when you were kind of like discussing the manifestation of, well, maybe it's like a program. For me, this could be the implementation of AI. This could be upgrading a membership to a subscription you already have. Like if you have Canva, doing Canva Pro. I love Canva Pro.
I love Canva Pro. We do have Canva Pro. Or even partnering with someone who doesn't traditionally work with podcasts. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's something to think about there.
I think also the imagery of stoking the fire, it almost feels like, that's something you do when you're ready to kind of get things really like rollicking.
Yeah, so we're close.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it says we kind of have everything we need, but if you were to see this card, and we're going to take a photo of all these cards, they'll be on our social medias channel. So check out Ghostly Podcast on Instagram, myself on Instagram, at Mayfield Magic, and also the Ghostly Facebook group.
Yes.
Ghostly Society.
Yes. Thank you so much. But I almost get a sense of, we're ready. We just need someone to kind of like...
Yes. Help us stoke the fire. Like, literally.
We need someone to just like take this stick and like prod us a little bit.
Yes, exactly.
So I like it because I also think not only does it speak of non-traditional, but when you're talking about help, at first you're like, well, maybe this or this. But I feel like now your direction with the energy is much clearer of, we have it. We just need someone to almost like antagonize it out of us.
There you go.
I like that.
We do have a fourth. Well, we have a bunch of tarot decks on the table right now, but a fourth tarot deck, and we're going to pull a card for our listeners.
Yes.
And
this is a very shiny deck.
It's super shiny. It's called the Mystic Mondays deck.
Ooh.
It's a very popular tarot deck. I'll be honest, it's not one that I use a whole lot professionally.
I could see that.
Just because it's just not quite my style. It's a great deck.
It looks like it's from the future.
It does look like...
Which, for predictions, that's pretty
appropriate.
There you
go.
It came from the future to tell us this.
I mean, that does feel like... So what we're going to do is I'm going to pull a card, and it's really... I'm not quite sure what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But we're about to find out. So
everybody be thinking about what you want to manifest.
And if you're driving, I hope you're already buckled up. All right. So we have the Six of Swords.
Ooh.
Oh, interesting. I think for our listeners...
I get scared of swords.
Why do you get scared of swords? Tell me more.
Well, because they're like...
Pointy,
and they're like
and there are
problems.
two sides to them.
Yes. and they're sharp. And for me, because I don't want to go too deep into this card, because once again, like in the book, I wanted this to feel applicable to whatever you're trying to manifest in your life. But it's interesting because both your reactions were kind of like sharp, a little pointy. I would almost just suggest to all of our listeners, if there's something you want to manifest, face some of the challenges head on. Some of the sharp, some of the pointy, some of the things that might feel a little dangerous. And I don't mean that in a way that
be the change.
That you would engage in something like dangerous, but more of a sense of, I'm going to take it head on.
Yeah.
So if you've been looking to start something, manifest something, I hope that this is a message that finds you, that allows you that little extra boost to make your dreams come true.
I like that idea. Face the challenges, and you'll be able to achieve what you want to achieve.
I love it. And I love the idea of your book, because a lot of the things I can relate to from the pagan side, because like, I don't know if I ever told either of you this, but I used to do tarot spells.
Oh.
I used to take cards from the tarot deck, and first of all, I did a whole ritual once involving it. I was by myself, so I had representation of the god and goddess. Yeah. I just picked out cards that I felt represented them, and all the elements, your wind, your air, your earth, water, and I just had cards that represented it and did like a whole ritual based upon just the cards, because what it does is, like, when you're doing a spell in witchcraft, it's actually more symbolic than anything else. It's the symbols that you see that help you manifest these kind of things. Yeah. So I really relate to that in a different kind of way.
I like that you talked about, and we spoke about this a little earlier with the manifestation, having something physical is so impactful for people. Yeah. I know so many people I work with where they'll take a tarot card and they'll take a picture of it. It'll be the wallpaper on their phone. Oh, they'll put it on their desk. And there's just something about seeing it. Yeah. That's really strong. And even, once again, I think in a really mystical way, the cards can produce a lot of power, a lot of symbolism. They can really manifest things that are very magical in our lives. But even in the most mundane way, having that visual reminder is so impactful for people.
That's interesting.
There's a lot to be found with that. Something else, you talked about tarot spells. Something else we're going to put into the Ghostly Patreon is something that I really like to do with tarot is tarot meditations.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a pre-recorded tarot meditation that I'll use with some of my students. I'm currently in the process of sharing it with Pat and Rebecca, and they're going to put it in the Patreon for anyone who wants to try.
Now, so when someone does a tarot, just what would they need with them before listening?
Oh, good question. So a tarot meditation can look a lot of different ways. The way this one is designed is you select a card and then it guides you through that. It's a guided meditation. Okay. If you don't have a tarot deck, go online and just type in tarot generator random and just pick a card.
Okay.
Using an actual deck, I for me, like that's the premium experience. But if you're sitting there and you're like, I just want to try this, I don't know if maybe like right now getting a tarot deck, like it's not quite in my budget, go for it.
Well, you know what would be so that I would say would be the standard. The premium then would be to have a book with you.
Oh, hello.
That takes you on an odyssey of tarot,
if you will, a tarot odyssey.
Odyssey, yeah. And where could we find your books, by the way?
Great question. The easiest way to find my book is on Amazon, and in the show notes we'll include a link so you can check it out. And yeah, so I hope that I can help guide you on your tarot odyssey.
There you go. So we have two more things. You were going to talk about something that you do to help with manifesting.
I want to talk about the journaling just really briefly.
Yeah, and then we'll end with the fun.
Perfect. Okay. So one thing I did want to just talk about with manifesting is journaling. Now I will admit,
not that journaling isn't fun. Sorry.
I'll admit, like and some people I work with, they love journaling so much. Yeah, it is not my cup of tea.
I am very poor at it.
There's a new thing on the iPhone where you can actually reminds you to journal.
What?
I'm going to try it. We'll see.
Yeah, and it actually gives you suggestions on what to journal too.
Oh, cool.
Which that's what I need whenever I'm journaling. Like I could journal, but I don't have the ideas to keep it going.
Pull a tarot card.
I should, yeah.
And a lot of people, so people use it for traditional journaling. Just I need an idea. They pull a tarot card and it inspires them. But also, when you're manifesting, journaling about it, writing it down, it helps you get into the mindset. It helps you realize it. Like I know there are people who, and to be clear, I'm not a therapist. That is not my service. But I know people who are like a therapist who will say, I want you to write about this. Write me a paragraph, write me a page. Not because they're sadistic and want people to feel like they're in high school, but more of a sit down and kind of work through it. So when you journal with a tarot card, it's a great way to learn about it. It's a great way to manifest. Something I do in tarot journaling is, and I'm very bad at this, is I'll draw the tarot card. I'm not good at that.
I love it.
But that has to connect you to that card a lot. Yeah.
Because it's something that I'm not good at. Yeah. So for me, if you're a great artist, I'm sure that there'd be a different depth to that experience. Sure. But for me, it makes me pause and say, oh, what's this element of this card that's really important to me? Yeah. And does the product always look great?
Well, but also you're looking at every inch of the card then when you're doing that. So you might pick up on something that you never saw before.
Oh, 100%. And especially when I'm doing an event where I'm doing a lot of really quick readings, sometimes it's easy to kind of gloss over the cards sometimes.
Sure.
I look at them all day. But if I'm sitting down to really draw something, I'm looking like even with the Ace of Swords, the symbols to the right and left of the blade. And if you want to see what we're talking about, check it out on our social media.
Yeah.
That is interpreted in very different ways. It's not a symbol I often click into, but even just looking at it now, thinking about it, I'm like, you know who really goes into that well? Oh, I'm going to check their book. Oh, I want to see what's going on with that. So it really lets you kind of dig a little bit deeper. And I will tease this. We don't have an official out date yet, but I am working on a companion journal for Tarot Odyssey.
Oh, yes.
Which really just guides you through it. And
do you have to draw?
Yes. There's a little bit. And like I said, there are times in our life where it's product based, but this is process over product. So hopefully that will be coming out, and definitely, just keep an eye on social media, and I'll make sure to let Pat and Rebecca know.
Yeah, definitely.
I can't wait.
All right. So we have one last little fun thing. So a friend of mine for Christmas, because she knows that I do like tarot, gave me a deck called the Horror Oracle.
The Horror
Oracle.
The Rural Juror.
So it's classic horror oracle. So it's like classic horror movies, like Frankenstein or whatever. And so it's not at all like a traditional tarot deck, which we've been seeing. So this is going to be, for all of us, right? For the year, another, the kind of fun, a little different. So Jake, why don't you pick a card?
Oh my goodness. Okay, I got it.
Okay, what did you pick?
I got twins, and we'll take a picture, but it looks like the twins from The Shining.
Yes, it does. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Definitely, it's an homage to The Shining.
Oh yeah. So kind of what I'm seeing is you can see some of that iconic carpet. You see the two twins in the background. You can see Jack Nicholson. You can see Shelley Duvall. And it definitely has. It's actually a really cool interpretation because the color scheme isn't what I would normally associate with that film, but it's actually very tasteful. It's very
like primary. Their faces have like some kind of color to them.
Yeah,
and stuff.
It's a little abstracted.
Yeah.
Or impressionistic, which I'm sure there's someone who's like a doctorate in art who's like, what are you saying? You're doing this so wrong.
Yeah.
But it's it's so funny. That is, I was doing some writing the other day, and I was putting on the soundtrack for The Shining because I was writing a ghost story. I was doing some horror writing.
Yeah, you have to make sure you say that carefully.
You gotta wait. This doesn't need to be an explicit podcast.
No, it's not.
But it's so interesting because there's so many things about that film that whether you love it or hate it, it's an evocative film.
Oh yeah.
And I think whether you love it or hate it, I don't know many people who would say it's a bad movie.
So this is kind of interesting. Yeah, sorry, it's taking me forever to I have to go through each
It's a
page.
tiny book.
No, you're doing great.
But there's things like It or the Blair Witch Project or Poltergeist, Rosemary's Baby. I even just saw Get Out.
Oh, so that's pretty modern.
It is. However, I'm not seeing the twins.
No, it is fine. And something else
we're gonna find it
just to talk about too is
let me see it for
the back design of all these decks are very unique.
Yes.
So what's really kind of interesting with the back design of the Horror Oracle deck is you see two kind of goat figures, I think kind of as like an homage to like almost like a Baphomet type.
Oh yeah,
maybe.
definitely, yeah.
You see some skulls. Once again, a very kind of, I don't know, the for me the composure of the image is kind of modern, kind of traditional, and two deck backs I think are really cool are the one that you have, the Tarot 1909.
It's really cool.
It's the original printing.
Okay.
And I've always wanted to do this design as like a wallpaper.
I love it.
House. And then
it's floral though, so I mean, I probably would stay away from it, but I love the way it looks on the cards. You know,
Listen,
for wallpaper, I don't
know if I do a whole room. Maybe like
an accent wall.
Like an accent wall?
Yeah.
Listen, we'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
All right. And then Rebecca's, the Mike Wilcox Tarot Oracle deck. It really cool back. Also, this is this really nice kind of gold edge to it.
That is so cool.
It's really like
it's fancy,
luxurious looking. And Mike Wilcox is such an amazing artist. You can check him out on Instagram, on his website, and he sells not only tarot decks but also a lot of prints, a lot of artwork.
Oh, cool!
In a very cool design. So yeah, a lot of cool things to say.
I love the back of the deck that I use. Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Found it finally.
No worries.
You would think it'd be like alphabetical or something. It is not. Okay. So this is obviously from The Shining, right? The twins, as you said. And it says, "Come play with us," is a little quote. Okay. So it says, "Consider the space you are inhabiting and the effect it has on you and others.
Ooh.
Good energy may be neutrally arrived at or the result of effort. Good energy may be neutrally arrived at or the result of effort. Bad energy may be inbuilt, a curse deeper than a hexed carpet pattern.
Ooh.
There are two ways to approach most situations, related but individual. The solution need not be as dull as all one or all the other."
Interesting.
Consider the space you are inhabiting and the effect it has on you and others. It seems like there's a lot. Like this is
there's
one of those things.
Lot
like
going
you could
on in
pick
that
one
one
of those areas.
Yeah.
Interesting. Unlike, this is I think always something. It gives an upright versus reversed.
Yes.
So upright is emphasize work. Reversed emphasize play.
So which one did you pick?
I don't remember.
I thought it was upright.
I think it was
yeah.
upright. So emphasize work.
I should have filmed.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting talking about taking space because when I also think about like film, like themes of that film, space, like the hotel is very much a character.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much physical space, but also you can also feel really tight at times.
It is, yeah, because I mean, if you're in a hotel and you're going to be staying there for the winter or whatever, you're not going to want to go to every single room. You're going to want to have one little section of it for yourself. So even though it's huge, you're going to probably bunker down into one little small area.
It's a weird dissonance. It's like people who live in manor homes.
Yeah.
They often don't really, in modern people who live in like these huge estates, they don't often like live throughout the whole one. They kind of bunker down into a section of it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, unless you have the Winchester Mystery House or something.
In which case you just get lost. I mean,
have you ever been there?
I have not.
I've been there. Yeah, I'm the only one out of the three of us that's been there, and
I've seen it from the outside.
It's really cool.
Actually, I have a really interesting Winchester House antique.
Really?
But I will say nothing more of it on the air.
Ooh.
No, I'm kidding. I hate when people do that. It's a vintage felt pennant.
Wow.
From like the 50s, like
so
when they would do souvenirs.
My big story is that when I went there, I was buying souvenirs for people that I worked with,
of course.
And so I found a like a pocket knife.
Oh.
And there was a guy that I knew that was an ex-cop, and I was like, this would be perfect for him. It was a buck knife, like those buck ones.
Yeah.
And I gave it to him, and I was like, I bought this at the Winchester Mystery House, and it said Winchester on it and everything. It was really great. And the next day he came to me laughing. He's like, you know what? It's made in China.
Yeah.
I was like, wah, wah, wah. Just brought down the whole thing.
It doesn't feel as mysterious when it says made in China.
Exactly, yeah.
That's such an interesting home. And if you want to learn more about its history from a very kind of real place, Colin Dickey's book, I think it's Haunted America. Or Ghostlands. I think I got you Ghostlands, actually.
Yeah.
There's this great chapter where they talk about kind of the history of that house going from Sarah Winchester wanting to like more or less, keep a local economy thriving, to it later being bought up by someone who owned like an amusement park and it being turned into a tourist attraction.
Yeah,
which
it totally is.
On the one hand, feels really kind of like sad and awful.
Yeah.
However, I do feel like she wanted to create something that would help keep that local economy supported.
Yeah.
And it kind of does that now.
Well, and it's going to be there
There's
forever if people keep visiting it. So,
and it will keep that economy going.
Yeah.
I mean, her views on spiritualism are pretty debated, and so that component of it, I don't feel as positively about.
Yeah.
But I do think there's something interesting about this idea that this woman was like, just keep building to keep jobs going. And what has it done? It's created lots of jobs for people.
Yeah, it has. It
so
has.
it's an interesting
You can
place.
also listen to the Ghostly episode on the Winchester Mystery
Oh my
House.
goodness.
You can, yeah.
From
Do
many,
it now.
Many years ago. Yes.
Well, I want to thank you, Jacob, for coming on the show, and I can't wait to dive more into your book. Rebecca has read a lot of it. I have not had a chance to. My copy comes Tuesday, so yeah, I'm really excited to dive into it, though.
All right. Thank you, Pat.
And I really appreciate it, and we look forward to having you on next month for the Ghostly live stream.
Yes, I can't wait, and I can't wait to pull some cards for some of your Patreons. I think
That's
it'll
gonna
be a lot
be
of
awesome.
fun.
Yeah. So, all right. So, recapping, right?
Yes.
Everybody go buy Tarot Odyssey. We'll make sure that we share the link on our socials or go to Amazon, search it. It'll be there.
And we'll have
I
it in
did
the show
that. It was
notes.
very easy. We'll have it in the show notes. Also, go check out our social medias to see all the cards that we pulled today for ourselves and for you. And come back in February. We will be back. We've got some awesome episodes on deck. We've got Disney.
Finally.
Ooh.
And then again, join the Patreon.
Disney himself.
Walt Disney.
Walt Disney, not Disney the location. Or,
Right.
Yeah.
We could. Well, there's
so much. There's so much.
I'm excited.
There is Haunted Disney World, too.
There is
So,
also that,
yeah.
but this is, the man.
We're going to start with Walt.
Yes.
Okay.
There you go. So come back in February, join Patreon, follow us on socials, all the things.
All right.
Awesome.
Until
you,
next
guys.
time, stay ghostly.
Bye.
Bye.